Hi again. Thank you again for stopping by. Today I'd like to talk about small acts of kindness, the power that's in small acts of kindness. We've heard about this before. It's part of a cliche on acts of kindness and random acts of beauty. I'd like to spend more time on it because it's such an important part of living a loving life and learning to love others. The small things we do, if you think about your life, it isn't huge, great, earth-shaking things that we do so much, but we do a million small things, a million actions. And if we just take some of those actions and make them into acts of kindness, they can be small, but they create ripples, like the proverbial ripples in a pond. And they reverberate, they affect everybody else. And so I want to focus today on doing small acts of kindness, because that, I think, is the secret to living a loving life, because we can do that every hour of the day. We have opportunities to do small acts rather than look at some sort of world-changing thing, which is good. But I think our truth lies in living each moment, looking for ways to express kindness and love to others. And never underestimate the power of these small acts of kindness. If you think about the many things that you have experienced in your life, many of the things that affected your life in a good or a negative way, were often small things. So small things can have a great effect. And today here, we want to focus on the good things, the good acts of kindness. But don't underestimate them just because it's a little thing and it's only going to be an act that lasts for a minute. No, many acts of kindness are remembered for the recipient's lifetime. And so we want to put a great deal of focus on acts of kindness. And let me give you an example of something that I experienced a few years ago. We had a motorhome and we were traveling out west. We live in Michigan, and we took the big circle around, ended up in California, coming back through Wyoming. And we stopped in a nice little western town called Cody, Wyoming, and we just happened to be there the week of the 4th of July. That week is a big deal in Cody, Wyoming. They have national champion rodeo going on with the best of the best. They're competing in all the different competitions at the rodeo. And so while we were there, we thought, well, we'll buy tickets and we'll attend each evening. And so we were there one evening. We walked from the RV park to the rodeo stadium, and it was pouring down rain. It was high wind. It seemed to come out of nowhere. I mean, just wind and rain. We thought, well, maybe the rodeo will be canceled. Well, it turned out that probably a half hour before the rodeo was to begin, the rain stopped. The bleachers were, they had a roof overhead, but the wind was blowing so hard that it blew the water in all over the aluminum bleachers. So we had to wipe them off, and people started coming in. And it began to fill, and almost just before it started, there were two elderly ladies that came up the steps. They were looking for a place, and they stopped 2 rows below us. And they asked the gentleman there and his wife if the seats were taken in front of them, and they said no. They're not, and they were just about ready to come into the aisle and out of the aisle and sit down, and the the man in front of us stopped him. He said, "Wait, no, you can't sit down." Well, he noticed there was water all over the bleachers. And he looked around for something, to wipe the water off. There wasn't anything. And then he thought, I had this coat. Now the coat was a jacket, but we sat behind him and I was admiring it. It was I don't know if he had gotten it from winning an award or a championship or something, but it was a very expensive looking jacket with lots of embroidery on it. A very nice, I could tell it was a special jacket. It wasn't something you buy in a store. This was specially made. It could have been, again, for winning a rodeo championship type of thing, because his daughter performed in the rodeo, was one of the riders that did the opening show and halftime show with other teenagers. But he looked around and then he thought, oh, I have this jacket. And he took this jacket off, this very, very special jacket. And he wiped the seat while these ladies waited. And then he said, okay, you can sit down. Well, my wife tapped his wife on the shoulder. They were sitting in front of us, and she said, that was really nice. And the wife, she said, oh, he's always doing that. He's always like that. And so the lady sat down, and then we noticed that someone came from up above. We were about halfway. Came from up above and came down and tapped the gentleman on the shoulder and said, I really appreciate what you did, and shook his hand. And it was very nice that you did that for those ladies. We saw you from up there. Now my point about this is that it was a very special thing that he did with a very special jacket. And, he doesn't have any idea that I'm talking about it on this camera now that's going nationwide, that's going, well, worldwide. YouTube is worldwide. I have written a book called The Great Love Story of Your Life, and I included this as an example of acts of kindness in that book. And that book is sold all over. And the people, that's just me. Other people in that stadium saw that small act of kindness, and if it affected me, I'm sure it affected other people too. And my point about this story is, this person from Cheyenne, Wyoming, I believe he said he was, has absolutely, I'm sure, no idea about all this, and would probably think it's ridiculous because, he just did what needed to be done. He saw something that should be done, and out of respect for the two elderly ladies, he could do, and he did it, and what's the big deal? That's the point. That is exactly the point of small acts of kindness. We can look at them later and say, I don't know what the big fuss was about. But it has an effect because the ripples that we just mentioned a minute ago, other people see this. Other people are affected by it. And it can change their behavior too. So it isn't just the fact that you do something small. That's nice. But it affects the recipient, and it affects everyone who happens to see it or be aware of it. So that points out one of the, now this example will be something that you'll think about, and you may share, and it may cause you to make a small change in your life and say, well, I think I'll try small acts of kindness too. And think about it. It all happened because this gentleman did a small thing in Cody, Wyoming on a rainy afternoon, and he never thought anything of it. That's the power of small acts of kindness. And that's why we want to do them every chance we get. Service to others helps us, it helps the person, it helps us feel good. And so everybody wins with doing service for others. It makes us feel good because it's a natural thing. And why is it natural feeling? Why does it feel so good? Well, I think it's because in our inner nature, if we peel all the layers of the onion away, and that can be hard to do. It takes some people years to peel the layers of that onion. It doesn't have to, but it often does. But if we peel those layers away, what we find in our inner being is love and kindness. It's natural. Without all of the bells and whistles, without all the garbage in our life, if we get down to it, it's natural, and that's why it feels so good, because that's the love that's inside us, that's there even if we don't feel it much of the time, because we're distracted and we got all of this garbage that we're dealing with in our lives and our thoughts that's distracting us. But if we get past that, that's why it's so natural and feels so good, because in our innermost being, that's who we are. And the other thing, if you decide that you want to try some acts of kindness, I caution you to not spend a lot of time worrying about your motives. I think that can be way overdone. Let me give you another example. I was sitting in a Sunday school class one time, adults, and we were talking about acts of kindness. I think maybe the book of James we might have been discussing. And this gentleman said, well, you know, it was wintertime in Michigan. He said, well, you know, there was an instance just lately. Our next door neighbor is an elderly lady in her mid-80s, and it snowed a lot. We had a big snowstorm in Michigan, and I was out shoveling my pathway, sidewalk and things, and I thought about, I could see her out there. She was getting a shovel, and she kind of clearing her step off there at the entrance to her house, and she was doing some things, and he said, I thought about going over and shoveling her sidewalk for her. And he was a serious, genuine, well-meaning person. But he said, I thought about it, and being true to myself, I wasn't really sure what my motive would be if I did that. Because if I went over to do my Christian deed, that would have been a good thing, he said. But if I was just going over to make myself feel better, and so that the neighbors could see and get praise for it, that wouldn't be right. And I didn't know what to do, so I didn't go over and help her at all, because I couldn't be sure my motives were in the right place, my heart was in the right place. Now I respect his opinion and his viewpoint, but the sad part about it, from my standpoint, is the lady didn't get help that she could have used. And I guess from my standpoint, what difference would it have made? What your motive is. If you see a need and you can help and you're willing to help, just help. Don't spend a lot of time worrying about the philosophy of it, or whether, why am I really doing this? Do it. Life change, love, caring is all about action. It's all about action. Without action, you can talk, you can read, you can pray, you can do whatever you want. But without action, it's really, nothing's going to happen. And so it's nice to think about our motives, but be careful that you don't worry so much about your motives that you really don't embark on this effort to make a difference in the world around you. And if you want some impetus to help you start acts of kindness, it might help you to see other people as having God in them, however you want to define God. I'm not here to preach a certain religion or philosophy or point of view, but however you define God, that is in charge of this universe and in our world, see the people around you as having God in them, residing in them. I'll tell you what that will do. Think about it. If you started to think of all of the people around you as having God indwelling in them, again, however you define God, how is that going to affect how you're going to interact with that person? What effect will that have on you? The first time this thought came to me, it was stunning. I thought it would transform 100% how I would look at people if I realized that's not just another person over there. There's a person that has a part of God in them. Now, it's true that some people, we may look at some people and say, well, yeah, Pat, but that person's a jerk. Well, that's back to what I said in other videos, that with the layers of the onion and the garbage in our lives and the distortion, it's my belief that within all of us there's that light. Now, because of our experiences and the thoughts we've chosen to embrace, that light cannot be so apparent with some people. But I still believe it's there. And that's what I'm saying is sure, the person may be acting like a jerk, but you need to get to the point where you can look beyond that. It doesn't mean you have to condone what the person's saying and doing, but look beyond that, and look beyond the garbage and the distortion and the baggage, and see that inner dwelling spirit in the person. It will change the way you relate to others. You'll be more patient. You'll be more kind. You'll be more loving. And again, it doesn't mean that you're accepting and approving of what they do. And you don't need to tolerate behavior that's toxic. But at the same time, you can be aware of that this is a person in the image of God that's got a lot of baggage and it's covered up with a lot of garbage. But I know that underneath all this, there's a specialness. And I'm going to bear that in mind when I'm dealing with this person, interacting with this person. And I don't know all of the reasons why the garbage and the baggage is there, but I just know it's there. I think if we see God's love in everyone, we'll be inclined to show love, and it'll transform how we relate to other people. It'll transform ourselves. So that's a powerful thought. Maybe not one that everyone will readily grasp at first, will readily embrace at first, but I suggest that you at least consider it, look at it, try out some of these new ways of relating with people, and see what it does. Feel free to leave a comment, which would be helpful for me to know how things work out for you, or if you have questions. I'm thankful that you stopped by today. I'm glad, and I hope you come back again. You have a good day.